I didn't know it then, but I was losing myself. I was losing control because I couldn't control someone else. Every Friday night, Josh didn't come home. Every bottle he hid, every promise that dissolved in the light, another piece of me went missing. I tried steering the situation, but somewhere along the line, it started steering me. After reading everything I could on being a good Christian wife, I threw myself into serving Josh in every way I knew how. And honestly, our marriage did improve for a little while. Fewer arguments, more peace, more rhythm. We slipped into our roles and tried to do them faithfully. But underneath that surface calm, the patterns were shifting. Not long after that, his parents began weaving themselves into our marriage more than I realized at the time. One moment in particular still stays with me. When Snow was not yet a year old, Josh's mother arranged a surprise date night for us. Theatre tickets, a hotel, and my overnight bags packed without my consent. I hadn't left Snow for a single night since she was born, and every instinct in me tightened. But I felt cornered into going, as though saying no would make me the ungrateful one. At the theatre, Josh started drinking. At first it was subtle, then unmistakable. The irritation burned hotter than I expected. Not only had I been maneuvered into leaving my baby, but now I was alone with a man who was already slipping out of sobriety. Something in me felt tricked. A few years later, a nearly identical event unfolded. Another attempt at a night out. Another round of drinking. This time Snow was about 3, and instead of heading to the hotel that Josh's mother booked, I said I wanted to see my kids and just go home. I was just too upset with the drinking. Josh resisted. I insisted. And as we walked through the city back towards the car, he spotted members of our church street ministering ahead and had panicked. He urged me to take a side street. I refused. I just kept walking straight toward the people he wanted to avoid because I wanted to see them and I wanted them to see him. But he left down another street and we split ways for that moment. And strangely, it felt good to say no. It was terrifying a little bit, but good, because I just wasn't going to submit to a drunk man that night, I told myself. So we eventually meet back at the car and I start driving towards his parents' home. When he realized I truly meant to go back to the kids, he kept telling me to stop the car. I ignored him. Then his tone changed. Sharper. Louder. But I kept driving until he yanked the handbrake. Everything slowed. The car spun a full 180 degrees in the middle of traffic. We rotated toward oncoming cars, and I was expecting an almighty crash. Instead, the car stopped, and I was facing the confused and angry drivers who were once driving so peacefully behind us. We should have crashed. I don't know how we didn't. Well, actually I do. It was the hand of God. I straightened the wheel and kept driving in silent embarrassment. 5 minutes later, I parked at the in-laws' house, walked inside and broke down. Josh disappeared again into the night. I stayed with his parents, exhausted. And life carried on, at least on the surface. In the early years, Josh might get tipsy once or twice a year. But suddenly, it became once every couple of months, then once a month, then every week. One night, sitting on the couch beside him, I finally broke. I cried and told him how scared I was of his drinking and what it could lead to. He emptied his bottles in the kitchen sink and reassured me that I had nothing to worry about, only for him to drink again the next week. What a star performance. I was heartbroken. and I felt betrayed. Then came the night that tipped something in me. It was 11 p.m. and he still wasn't home. I called him 55 times. It felt like he was rejecting or ignoring every call. I sat alone in the dark of our living room, sick with worry and filled with anger. By 3 a.m., when he finally stumbled through the front door, something inside me snapped. He walked toward our bedroom and I stopped him, demanding to know where he'd been and why he ignored my phone calls, all 55 of them. He claimed he never saw them. And hearing that, after hours of silence and being hung up on, it pushed me over the edge. And I started yelling, I started pushing him. I completely lost control, and I was really ashamed of myself, and I hated myself for it. I didn't recognize who I was becoming. When he wasn't drinking, we got along. We laughed. We were a family. I adored that version of him. But when the drinking returned, I just couldn't handle it. And sometimes I left the house for the night with the kids and sometimes without them. I was desperate to make him understand how deeply this was hurting us. I do regret leaving the kids with him during those times. I didn't realize the confusion it created in their little hearts, and that regret still stings. But nothing I did or said made a difference. He kept drinking. I kept breaking. My anger began exploding in ways I'd never imagined. Yelling, swearing, tearing up my own artwork, shattering the glass on our front door. That wasn't me. I didn't recognize the woman who did those things. And I wanted to leave the marriage so much. I kept imagining me doing it. It was a good picture. But the fear of raising 2 kids alone kept me in the marriage, and I felt so trapped. Sometime later, Josh found a fixer-upper house 3 hours away and wanted to buy it as an investment. I said no. I knew it would steal what little time he gave the family. But with the in-laws helping with the deposit and the pressure building from Josh, I signed the papers anyway. That decision changed everything. Every Friday, Josh would drive 3 hours out of town to work on the house and wouldn't return until Sunday afternoon. His parents covered his hotel stays without asking for my thoughts and feelings on it. And they knew his drinking was escalating and our home life was fractured. Their involvement added a new layer of resentment I didn't know what to do with. It hurt to watch him walk out the door every weekend. It hurt even more when he didn't call to say goodnight to the kids. Something in me really knew that something was wrong. I mean, yes, the signs had been there before, but this time something inside me finally said, this isn't normal. This isn't love. Why is he not calling these beautiful children to say goodnight? And one Sunday he didn't come home at all. No calls, no messages, nothing. And panic crawled through my body. I checked the bank account to look for clues and I saw a hotel transaction. And he was back in our city. But why had he not come home to me? I somehow managed to sleep, and the next morning I check the bank account and see charges from the airport. My heart dropped so far, it felt like it fell through the floor. Had he gotten on a plane? Where was he? Had he abandoned us? Would the kids ever see him again? For the first time, I reached out for help. I didn't know what to do. I was losing it. I called my pastor, Pastor Rob, the same pastor who had warned Josh not to buy the fixer-upper if it meant sacrificing his family. He and his wife Poppy stepped in like lifelines, helping me stay grounded and reminding me I wasn't alone. Later that day, Josh contacted his parents to say he was in Australia with no way to get home. My pastor immediately stepped in and told his parents they were not to give Josh any money without running it through me first. Their interference had been hurting us for years, and my pastor wanted it to stop. Josh was eventually booked on a flight back home, and Pastor Rob decided he was going to meet him at the airport to confront him about what he'd put our family through. I chose not to be home when Josh returned. I needed space, I needed clarity, I needed to breathe somewhere. He could not reach me, and again I wanted him to see how much he'd hurt me. So I stayed with a family member while Pastor Rob took the lead in holding Josh accountable, praying this might be the turning point. But here's the part I didn't understand then, the part I only see now. By that point, I wasn't just dealing with Josh's drinking. I was dealing with the version of myself that his drinking had created. There were nights I'd sit alone in the living room, the house quiet, the clock mocking me, and I'd catch a glimpse of myself in the dark window or the bathroom mirror, and I wouldn't recognize the woman looking back. Her eyes were sharp from worry, her shoulders curled in from disappointment. Her voice had an edge she didn't used to have. Her anger came out sideways, through slammed doors, broken artwork, swearing. Actions and words she wished she could swallow back down. I didn't know it then, but I was losing myself. I was losing control because I couldn't control someone else. Every Friday night, Josh didn't come home. Every bottle he hid, every promise that dissolved in the light, another piece of me went missing. By the time he disappeared to Australia without telling us, the mirror had become a stranger. I didn't like the wife I'd become. I didn't like the way I snapped or panicked or begged or broke, and I didn't like that my children saw me unravel, and they were hurt because I took my frustration out on them too. And God, in his mercy, sent someone to interrupt that spiral. Pastor Rob didn't fix everything, but he did something equally important. He held up a mirror I had been too tired, too ashamed, or too busy surviving to look into. He told me the truth, that I wasn't crazy, that Josh's behavior wasn't normal, that my reactions were the result of too much pain, and that the woman I used to be and the woman I was meant to become was not gone, just buried. That season marked the slow beginning of my restoration, not because Josh changed, but because I finally saw how much I had lost and how much I had hurt God, and that I needed to be accountable to him regardless of what other people do, and how badly I needed God to piece me back together. I think about the verse in Romans 7:15. For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. This verse was a mirror. I hated who I was becoming in that environment, and I kept doing the things that kept me stuck, and it was hurting my testimony, and it was hurting my children who were watching me. And yeah, it didn't make the marriage easy. I could blame it all on Josh and his drinking or his parents, but I didn't know it then. But my attitude, my approach could change and make the navigation of all of this a little bit easier. Let me ask you a question. When you look back on your hardest season, the one that stretched you thin and reshaped parts of you, what was the moment you realized you'd lost pieces of yourself along the way? And just as important, what helped you start finding your way back? I'm Gigi, and it's my hope that women and men in high conflict relationships stumble onto this channel and find the hope they've been seeking. Join me next episode as I keep walking through the ashes of my past and show you where joy can bloom again.